Episode number 353. Give one reason I should do business with you.
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and chairman, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast, brought to you by networkingnow.com, which is the leading site on the net for networking downloadables. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the chairman of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Priscilla. Thanks for asking, and I think we're going to have a fun topic for this episode.
What is this about? Tell us.
Okay, so a few months ago, I was really late to the game. I'll say that right out. And for those listening to the podcast, you may not know what television show I'm referring to because people from all over the world listen to this podcast. But a few months ago, I started watching some episodes of Shark Tank, which is, I believe, filmed in Los Angeles and shown all over North America. It may be shown around the world. If it's shown in your country, I'd love to hear it. I'd like to see how widely spread Shark Tank is. Anyway, I started watching this show, and I got totally hooked. I mean, I was really late to it because I think it's in the third or fourth season. But I got totally hooked. There's some serious business lessons that can be learned by viewing the show. Have you've seen the show, yeah?
Yeah, I have seen the show, and I like it very much.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And I saw one just recently, an episode just recently. That was a rerun from a previous season. And I'm completely hooked now, and it's kind of sad. I'm going back and looking at past episodes. But there was an entrepreneur on there that I think really gave or illustrated a great lesson for other entrepreneurs and salespeople. The entrepreneur, her name was Raven Thomas, and Raven started a food business called the Painted Pretzel. And these are pretzels that are covered with chocolate and other goodies. And she had a pretty good business. And according to the panelists, and for those of you who've never seen the show, there are panelists. They're the sharks. And someone comes in and pitches their business at them. And it's usually a business that's been around for at least a little while. And they're looking for investors. And the sharks, if they want, invest their own money. These are multi-millionaires, or in some cases billionaires. And so they get pitched, and if they like the business, they invest. And after a fair amount of discussion on this episode, Lori Greener, who's one of the sharks with the Home Shopping Network, I think she does a lot of stuff on. And it got down to the end of the conversation, and Lori asked an important question, and it's a question that we in BNI are asked sometimes. Why should we do business with you? What's special about doing business with you? Well, Lori asked a variation of that. Why should we invest in you? That's what she asked Raven. Why should we invest in you? And I realized at that moment that this was the big question. And I knew that Raven's answer would either make or break the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And Raven looked at Lori and replied with the following. She said, well, the main reason that you should invest in me is that I have 2 little children and blah, 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 blah. I mean, she just went all on about her being a mom. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I paused the show. And I looked at my wife, and I practically yelled. I said, she just blew it. She totally gave a relational answer. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that answer. The fact that she owns her own business and has kids, great, that's super. The problem is that she was giving a relational answer to a bunch of transactional sharks.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about blah, 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 blah. They don't. Mm-hmm. They want something closer to show me the money than I love what I do. And, I know there are going to be some people listening going, well, that's not right. That's not fair. That's not this. That's not that. Okay, life's not fair. I'm not telling you what's fair. What I'm saying is It was totally predictable. The moment she started to give that answer, I knew she most likely lost all chances of being funded because she was giving a relational answer to transactional professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I said all of this to Beth, you got to love DVR because I pause it and we're talking. And Beth, my wife, said, you have to know your audience. When you're talking about your business, you have to know your audience. And if she knew the audience, she didn't position her answer to the audience. And I thought that statement was spot on. So we talked about that before I played it again. Beth and I talked about how crucial it was for Raven to speak the language that the sharks speak.
Right.
If she wanted them to invest in her, she needed to speak a language that was focused on opportunity, on growth, on return on investment, on cold hard cash. Instead, Raven talked about how she felt about her business and how it related to her children. And her answer failed to include anything at all that the sharks could relate to as serious analytical business investors looking for reasons that would convince them that Raven's business would be a good investment. So I hit play. I resumed watching the episode. And to my astonishment, one of the sharks, Robert Herjavec, and I love this guy, by the way. I think I really like this shark a lot. If I ever had the chance to be a panelist on a business show, I think my style would be most similar to his. And Robert looked at her and he realized she totally blew it. And everybody was shaking their heads with her answer. But Robert said, okay, I think you need a do-over. So let's do that again. And let's try to answer the question for, a group of investors. Let's do it again. And she thought for a moment, and then she said, well, a good reason to invest in me is that I had to walk away from a $2 million deal because I didn't have the capital to fill the order. And that door is still open. That answer was a showstopper. It completely landed the shark's attention. Within a few moments, Mark Cuban, who's another one of the sharks, and he's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, offered Raven $100,000 cash and distribution of her product at his stadiums, and each location of the movie theater chain that he owns. And she, of course, said yes to the offer. As a result, by the way, I looked her up after the episode. She now expects that her company sales will exceed $1.2 million this year.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And the message here, the lesson learned for us in BNI is know your audience. Know the people you're talking to. I get it that we're not asking for investors. However, we are asking for referrals. And it's important to know the audience, to know our market, to know what we're looking for and what they're looking for out in the room. Give answers to the question, why should I do business with you, that are relevant to the people you're talking to. I'm not saying tell them what they want to hear. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is tell them in a way that they're best able to hear it, that's most relevant to them, to the talking points that they're going to be most interested in. Look, this is sales 101.
Yeah.
It's sales 101. And sometimes we forget that part of the referral process involves those 4-letter words. Sell.
Yeah.
Sale. You got to sell. And in order to sell effectively, even if it's selling yourself and why we should do business with you, it's important to speak their language. So I think it's imperative, absolutely imperative, to know your audience, tailor your comments to suit the people you're talking to. It's an extremely important lesson in both the business arena and the networking arena. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why I recommend when you first meet people, begin by asking them questions about themselves prior to talking about yourself. Because the more you know about the people you're talking to, the better able you'll be to craft your own message in a way that can effectively resonate with them. And that's the lesson that I learned just recently from Shark Tank.
That's great. That's a great lesson. Really, really good. I think also you've had a previous podcast on kind of personality types. And
behavioral styles, yeah.
Yeah, behavioral styles and how that affects how you present yourself. And so that ties into what you're talking about too, I think.
It does. And the more you can understand somebody's behavioral style, the more effectively you can talk to them. In every case with the sharks in Shark Tank, they were in based on room full of referrals, a high D personality is a go-getter. They're all go-getters. Mm-hmm, They're all go-getters, very assertive, reasonably aggressive. And so the last thing you want to do is give a relational answer to a go-getter. And I just saw that coming a million miles away. If you have a chance, go watch that episode. But more importantly, if you're listening to this podcast, I'd love to hear either a success story or a horror story that you might have about people knowing or not knowing their audience. It can be you, it can be somebody that you witnessed, but share your story here in the comments section. I'd love to see it. And by the way, I read all of the comments that get put up there. Every single one of them, I read them as they come in.
Great.
Thanks, Priscilla.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Dr. Misner. Well, I'd just like to remind you, the listeners, that this podcast has been brought to you by networkingnow.com, which is the leading site on the net for networking downloadables. Thank you so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we hope you'll join us next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.